Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Double Feature Podcast. I'm your host, Dean, joined by the baseball-loving maniac himself, David. David, how are you?
Dean, the grass is mowed. My mitt is oiled. I'm ready to play today in center field.
Is that a sex joke?
No, you've never heard that song? Put me in, coach?
I'm ready to play.
Today. Put me in center
Field.
field.
Okay. All right. So yeah, if you didn't guess, today is the baseball episode. David, you're gonna take the lead on this one because I know you wanted to talk baseball for weeks. What are we
Come
watching?
on, kid. I'm ready.
All right.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive right into them log lines. A former ball player hires an Ivy League graduate to take on the biggest budgets in baseball for pennies on the dollar. A veteran minor leaguer and the town scholar compete for the arm of the young team ace in the heat of a winning season.
So, what are those two movies?
Well, these two movies I thought were a good pairing because everybody loves Bull Durham. Even if you aren't a baseball fan, I think this is kind of a mid-'80s classic of the likes of a lot of other movies, whereas the other baseball movie is from we could call him prolific, I think. We call him legendary screenwriter Aaron Sorkin, Moneyball from 2012. I love both these movies.
These are not your first watch, I'm guessing?
No, definitely not. Bull Durham was a staple of when I played high school baseball. The team would, before home games, sit around, put this movie on. We'd walk to the Jack in the Box across the street, grab some tacos for cheap, come back, watch it in the classroom, and head down to the field to start playing catch. Those were the days. And then Moneyball, came around while I was in high school, but isn't quite as, it's not meant to be a fun movie, but really captures the heart and soul of America's pastime.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it does a fantastic job at it. On top of having both of these movies a great soundtrack, so I'm excited.
On the note of the Jack in the Box tacos, so when I played football in high school, we do the same thing when we would watch film in the morning. So we would watch the film for like the game on Friday, and we would go run to Jack in the Box and pick up like a shit ton of tacos to eat during that. There's just something about Jack in the Box and sports that just go hand in hand.
Yeah. It is really funny because, it's completely off topic, but I don't know how far away Jack in the Box was from your school, but it was like directly across the street from ours.
Oh, ours was a good probably like 5-10 minute walk, something like that. Because none of us drove. Like, let's be real here. We're too poor for that shit.
I don't know. I can't remember. It was because this is the other thing is my school's surrounded by like 4 dirt lots on either side. So it's basically the school, and then the other building was Jack in the Box across the street, but then the Arco across from that. But no, it was kind of nice to have like a high school hangout like that after, like the burger place across the street. But that's kind of just on the note of the main topic here, America's pastime.
Yes.
Which one should we dive into first?
Well, I've never seen either of these movies before. These are both fresh for me. Never watched Bull Durham ever before this. Never watched Moneyball even when it came out. So if we really want to talk about it, let's talk about these in worst to best. And I'm saying the worst out of these two is Bull Durham. That movie was something else.
What?
Yeah, I had some some issues with Bull Durham if I'm being real with you.
You got to be joking right now.
No meme, dude. No joke. Honestly, I was watching Bull Durham the other day for this, and yeah, about halfway through I kept checking the time my timeline, or the how much longer I had left on the movie, cuz I was like, I don't know, when did the first it's so weird. And then I was like, okay, maybe this is one of those, David really likes this movie, whatever. And so I looked it up, did my research, and this movie is like on the top of all these sports lists. It's like, oh, they use this as best screenplay in 1988. I'm like, what's going on here? Am I in Bizarro World?
You are in Bizarre World because you're about the only person who doesn't like this movie.
I mean, I'm not saying I hate it, but like, it is not a great movie. This is like okay. This is like, and this isn't even the best baseball sports movie I've seen. All right, like, this ain't Rudy. This ain't oh god, A League of Their Own. This ain't even like Friday Night Lights. Nah, this is, it's not even Remember the Titans. This is I don't know. This ain't a great. I don't even know if this is a good sports movie. TBH.
I just can't. I can't believe this. But you know what? I guess on that note, let's dive right into Bull Durham because I think this is insanity that's coming out of Dean's mouth right now.
Maybe you can do some convincing for me. I did it to you with Terry Gilliam and Time Bandits. You can do this with me and Bull Durham. Try and hashtag
Yeah,
change my mind.
we're gonna have to. So we start Bull Durham with the lovely Susan Sarandon serenading us with that sweet voice on a hot summer day, spring.
It's almost like Rocky Horror all over again.
A little bit. It's kind of funny how we continue to find the same people in episodes very close to each other.
That's true.
Similarly, we'll have Brad Pitt in which, shoot, I guess that was 2 episodes ago. We had him in
12 Monkeys, yeah.
12 Monkeys. A much different Brad Pitt, that is.
Yeah. I will say this, in her opening monologue, when she says, I believe in the Church of Baseball, I have no idea why, but that was the most American thing I think I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I mean this movie, two things are very apparent here. It certainly tries to take this whole sports movie shtick of being inspiring and flip it on its head, but there's one thing that's still constant, and I really love the clinging to small town America. I mean, not to say that small town America is dying or anything. I mean, that's a whole can of corn in itself. But you always love a movie that can really capture the magic that is, Main Street America. And
Yeah, that's
so
kind of interesting. This movie takes place in South Carolina, I think.
yeah,
And
Durham.
I didn't, no meme, didn't even know Durham was a real place until I looked up this movie. Thought it was made
Home of the
up.
world famous Durham Bulls of the Tampa Bay Rays minor league system.
Again, didn't even know this was a real thing. But yeah, so I watched, but it really does feel like, okay, this is like stereotypical, like, hometown America. Like, this feels like this is hometown. When you say hometown, that's this movie. That's this, like, Durham, Carolina. It's interesting.
Yeah. But we have Sarandon walking to the ballpark as the whole town congregates at I can't even remember the name of the stadium now that I think about it. But it is the debut game of our lovely little main character, the team ace, Nuke. Although before he earns his nickname, as he's, well,
In
warming up for the game in the locker room with the
lovely Millie.
yeah, the team owner's daughter. Um, some could say they are getting loose, but in 1980s America, they love their promiscuity.
Also, so Tim Robbins, he is playing Andy Dufresne, he's playing um Ebby Calvin Nuke, and he's supposed to be this, you know, ace pitcher, superstar, arm like a cannon, but like then we see him actually play, and David. Is he a terrible pitcher? Because I think he's a terrible pitcher from
Well,
what we see.
basically,
Because he can't hit anything.
that's kind of the thing is guys get drafted all the time for having a 95 mile per hour fastball because that's the potential here.
Mm.
Whenever you're a sports prospect, there's one thing that you have as potential, and then other things are going to have to teach you once you get in the farm system. Sort of farm systems for. And little old Andy Dufresne can throw his 95 mile per hour fastball, though he throws it just about up into the press box. In fact, he does. He definitely has potential. There's guys all the time who come out with a good fastball or even a good breaking ball, but then have no control. They're cocky, they're whatever, and he has all that. So, it's just one of those things where once you get into a minor league system, and I'm not well versed on like the whole baseball minor league system back in the 80s, but now there's like, there's AAA, which is like right before majors, then double A below that. There's high A ball, there's low A, there's rookie ball, there's October League, there's Arizona League, there's International League, there's international camps, there's development camps. There's so many different levels of baseball because there's so many different players in the system at different skill levels. So it's honestly a miracle that Tim Robbins even gets to be this high up, as the Bulls are, a level before the show.
As they call
Um,
it, because I don't know if they could get the rights to say Major League Baseball for this movie. I don't know.
Probably not. I'm sure there is a discrepancy there, though the show is a very common label for the
Yeah.
major leagues. But yes, no, he's got his potential, but that's kind of the character we're working with here is a guy who's got some stuff, but is a little bit too cocky because his minor league contract is making him able to afford a Porsche.
Which comes up a lot in this movie, and we never see the Porsche.
Yeah, it would have been kind of nice to include the Porsche,
Like
but
this is 1980s. This is peak Porsche, people. What the
yeah,
hell?
they spent all that money on that tour bus.
Yep, that grimy, dirty tour bus.
Yeah. But after his debut game and his debut win, which is a really great feeling, even though if you walk 18 in any league, you're probably going to lose. So I'm a little surprised by that. But
I'm that's a question right there. How good is their offense if he could walk 18 and they still win that game?
mm,
What is their on base percentage if if they're walking 18 people a game?
well, yeah, I don't know if it's a question necessarily of on base percentage so far as if you're walking 18, but you're getting double plays in between those 18 walks, the game's salvageable. Your WHIP, which is the average statistic for how many runners on base you allow per inning, per game, um, is probably way through the roof. But if the pitcher's got a low ERA, earned run average, the WHIP doesn't really matter after a certain point to a lot of people. Though it's concerning, but that doesn't matter for now. He's first game in the rear view. He's got nothing but life ahead of him. Well, then in walks the guy who's kind of got some life in the rear view. Crash, the new catcher for the Durham Bulls.
How do you get a nickname like Crash?
I mean,
It
Kevin
is what it
Costner kind
is.
of looks like he's smashed his head through a few windows. So
Is that just a thing? Because so Kevin Costner in this movie, he's 33 years old. I looked this up, and Tim Robbins is only like 30. But like, does Kevin Costner just has he always looked like he was somebody's dad his entire life?
yes, the short answer is definitely yes.
You see a high school picture of him here, just like, oh, that must be somebody's dad who like took a picture for his kids. Like, no, that's Kevin Costner. He's just always looked 40.
Kevin Costner looks like he drinks and drives to the birth of his third kid.
He looks like he looks like the divorced dad. Like in the dictionary, it's like, what does a divorced dad look like? And it's Kevin Costner.
Yeah, he looks like he gets mad when his kids don't like the way he cooks his mac and cheese.
I mean, I get mad if you cook my mac and cheese wrong. Well, whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
just saying.
So in comes Crash. He's a little bit disappointed that he's being sent to another damn team on another damn state for another damn season in the minor leagues. But
I know this is
instead
a.
of,
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
oh no, you go ahead.
So I had a question about Crash's character because I know this is a thing in like boxing and all that stuff where there's like journeymen where
Sure.
they're generally good enough to like compete. They're just they're never gonna win a title. So they jump from like promotion to promotion, earning a living. They do like okay. Is that like that's a thing in like in like baseball and like minor league ball? I know it's a kind of thing in major league ball where you do just okay to like not get cut kind of thing. But is that a thing in minor leagues or do they just drop you?
No, I mean, I think it's the kind of thing where there's 10,000 different roles you can fill in baseball. If you're a star, you're going all the way and you're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars for your contract out the gate. But, there's guys in the major leagues who are career bench players and all they do is pinch run. There's the career backup catcher, there's career relievers, there's career,
There are guys whose
um,
whole job is to sit on the bench and the one you get one play like every game and that's it.
yeah, because if it doesn't flesh out after the first few seasons, normally you might be good enough to make it last for 10 more years, but you're never going to break any records. And then sometimes a guy who there's actually a point later in the movie in which Crash mentions he was in the majors for 21 days. I wouldn't be surprised if he was brought up on injury notice for a major league player who was on the team and had to be on like the 15-day injured list, and then he got his moment, but it wasn't impressive enough, or there's too many guys, and
Well, he plays
you know,
catcher, right?
yeah, and normally a major league team, which consists of 25 players, carries two, maybe three catchers. But if he's a young guy being brought up and there's already a star catcher or a platoon of catchers where they switch off depending upon righty or lefty pitcher, then he could just be sent down and kind of forgotten about. Though it is interesting that he also will eventually hold the major league record for minor league career home runs and still not be considered for at least like a role on the major league team and or a decent piece in a trade. But this actually brings me to my favorite line in the movie, which is kind of one of his introductory lines, when walks in the office. They ask who he is, and he calls himself the player to be named later. I mean, that's one of my favorite lines.
Player to be named later. I like it.
Yeah, there's so many trades that happen in baseball in which, it's a star player for a young star prospect, and then a player to be named later. And that kind of happens when major league organizations are like, all right, we'll give you the future of our organization, but we also get to choose somebody to dump off on you, and it unfortunately it looks like Crash was the dump to be had.
Which is kind of weird because when we see him actually play in like the next couple of scenes, he's really good. Like
Fantastic.
cuz they bring him in and his whole like purpose in the film is to make Eddie, is it Eddie or Ebby?
Mm,
I think it's
I think it's Eddie.
yeah, Eddie. His whole goal is to make this guy not a shit pitcher and actually like throw well and go on target and all that stuff. And he's really good at it. I'm surprised he's not just brought in to be a pitching coach.
Yeah, this is another interesting thing about the dynamic that these two characters will have is Crash is a very good catcher in himself, in that he's very, catchers, part of their whole job isn't just to be the rock behind the plate, but also the psychological workhorse of the duo that's trying to get outs. And that's what he's very good at. But then he's also able to kind of tame this wild bronco that is on the mound. And I have a feeling that that's the real reason that he's been left to die in the minors, is that he's just too good at pitcher development, which is, a valuable skill to have in any organization.
Because pitchers are the ones that get that cycle through baseball probably the fastest.
Yeah.
Because it's so much strain.
The other thing about him being like a pitching coach is major league and even minor league pitching coaches are most likely former pitchers, because coaching a pitcher requires a lot of knowledge about how to pitch, not just what to pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And while Crash probably has that knowledge, I'm don't really know if he knows exactly the fine mechanic. I mean, it probably was a lot different back then when, you know, pitching was like,
before the roids got in.
yeah. I mean, roids were never a huge thing for pitchers, but it was really just that like baseball back then was as simple as crushing a beer can. You know, the game is a much different game today, as Moneyball will later illustrate. This was a game before sabermetrics, before statistical analysis, before slow motion recapture, before particular physical sciences. Back then, it was all about throwing hard and hitting hard, and well, as again the movie then puts it, baseball is a simple game. You throw the ball, you hit the ball, you catch the ball.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which is a really like simple, but it's kind of like a nice thing. Like I can imagine if you were a kid and you grew up like liking baseball and you heard that, that's probably like a nice thing to like to like think of the game simply and just have fun kind of thing. Which is,
I think that's
you
what's
know,
so attractive about baseball, and what this movie really gets right about it is that all it is about just going out on the field, having fun, and if you don't give it your best shot now, you always have next game because there's 161 more.
yeah. So after Crash and Eddie, they tango because they meet in like a bar fight.
Yeah, another iconic scene in which after the games, when they're all perusing at the local bar, and Eddie's getting all cocky with the girl, and Crash tries to schmooze on up to the same girl, buys her a drink, played by Susan Sarandon, by the way, who I guess you could say is kind of the voice of reason-ish character in this film.
I mean, we'll get into her in a minute when we get to when they get her back to the apartment.
Oh, a lot of people have apparently gotten into her in this film.
Yeah.
But, this creates kind of a tussle between the two of them, and they go outside to scrap it out. Crash says, I bet you can't throw a fastball at my chest. And Nuke takes the bet, although, of course, he is nervous about it. He's nervous of embarrassing himself and or hurting this guy. And when he goes to throw the fastball, he throws it over everybody's head and through the window of the bar. And then that's when they finally kind of learn that Crash is his new catcher, and they're going to be spending a lot more time together.
And they kind of got to be nice. And the first point where they have to spend some real quality time together is when Susan Sarandon takes them both back to the apartment and reveals her intentions with them.
Yeah, she's an interesting fellow. So her whole thing is that she chooses apparently to hook up with one player from the minor league team every season, and they're kind of the final cut of the rub here.
Because and also her vagina is magic. Because apparently everybody she hooks up with goes to the majors like right after the end of the season.
Well, baseball is also, as we've learned before, a game of faith and hope. So,
and that is her vagina.
Something works,
bruh. Like, okay, I need to know why Susan Sarandon's vagina is magic for Major League Baseball. Like, is she just the stud finder? Is that what she's a scout and she's the stud finder for the best the best switch hitter in the league? These are only slightly sexual jokes. I know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a feeling that Susan Sarandon's, she must have a way with men.
Yeah. Also,
what one wouldn't give. But
so there's also another point where she has a baseball shrine in her house. And that's not like I'm a fan of baseball, because she literally worships baseball as a religion. And is she crazy? Because I think she's crazy.
She's my dream girl, Dean. I can't believe this.
Bruh, she's like 42 in this movie. Like, come on.
She's not 42. No.
She is 42 in this. 110%. She is 42 in this movie.
You cross-check that age?
Cross-check that age, yeah. She was 30 in Rocky Horror. Yeah,
Well,
so
she's probably playing younger. I mean, at this point, Tim Robbins, he's 30, but there's no way a 30-year-old is getting his major league debut and being that happy about it. He's probably playing, really, if anything, he's in his early 20s if he's this cocky, young, and dumb.
yeah.
So Costner's probably actually playing 33. That's probably about right.
Yeah, that's the thing with Annie, which is a Susan Sarandon's character. Her whole thing is like, I think she thinks she's way, way hotter than she actually is in this movie. Because don't get me wrong, Susan Sarandon is a lovely woman, very attractive, even in the film. But I think she, in her character, has this mindset that she is a drop dead knockout and can pick any of these guys and just
Hold
have
your
them.
tongue, sir. Susan
What?
Sarandon anybody would be lucky to sniff the shoes that she walked in.
Oh, what? Dude, look, first of all, foot fetish, but whatever. Look, all I'm saying is
Well,
she's
Tarantino fan.
Tarantino fans, life happens. All I'm saying
Yeah.
is you gotta admit, Susan Sarandon in the film, she's an attractive woman. I'm not gonna argue that. But how she acts in the film is that she is an eater of men that fall before her. And let's be real here, Millie is way like hotter than Susan Sarandon or Annie is in this film.
But Sarandon, as they say, is a five-tool player. She's not only got the body, she's got the brains. Whereas, on the other side of the
Yeah, look, if
line.
we're talking, the player that's got the show and the player that's got the go, she's probably definitely got the go here. You can tell that is a face of a woman with experience. She knows her craft and she does it well.
Yeah,
But
she is a beautiful reader of poetry. Um,
which leads us into the what happens at that apartment scene, because Crash is so not into this situation of her just using him for sex, but Nuke is super down with it, and they go up to her room. She ties him up, and she reads him poetry into the wee hours of the night. And Nuke is just kind of not getting it. Yeah. Again, that scene is just so fucking weird. I don't.
well,
Bruh. I
it's a
don't
very
get it.
this is a unique movie, but I think the thing that I think about is, while it may not be as polished as the Sorkin cut will be, is it's very unique in itself, and three very interesting characters come together to create this love triangle, of which will be an endless source of fun. But we Nuke has his poetry reading, and they spend all night, you know, delving into the wonders of Whitman. And then he comes to the locker room the next day, tired and worn out from so much reading. And as the season continues on, he's kind of sucks. Well, no better way to put it. He can't find his control. Crash, because he keeps trying to go against him, keeps telling batters what's coming to teach him a lesson.
Which I
And
don't get. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep chiming in and stopping you when it's things I don't get, because I don't get that. Why is you as a catcher would inform the batter about the pitch that's coming just to screw over your pitcher? Because that's how you lose games.
well, first of all, in minor leagues, winning and losing games isn't necessarily the point. Everybody's there just to get to the show, so the record of the team isn't paramount. Um, but what's really going on is the game of baseball is definitely a game of twos. And between the pitcher and the catcher, it's the most important pair. While the pitcher sure knows how to throw the pitches, he knows what he's got, and might think he knows how to strike batters out.
Mm.
Really, the guy who's into the psychology of the hitter is the catcher, because he's the guy talking to him at the plate. He sees every swing. He notices how late or early he is on a pitch. He knows where what part of the zone he's going to be swinging at. He has a relationship with the umpire. He knows it all, you know.
He's the guy who's really throwing shit at him.
Yeah, and it's like basically he's the guy. Whereas the pitcher is the violinist, the catcher is the um, what are those called? Composers, I guess, you know.
The pitcher's the one who does all the flashy shit, but the catcher's the one who sets all of it up.
Yeah, you know. So when you're off beat as the pitcher, the composer's got to kind of tap his stick and say, "Let's get back on beat here." But
Hashtag my
obviously,
tempo.
what was that?
Hashtag my tempo, please. Before I
Oh
throw a
yes.
chair at you. Come on, whiplash, man. Another
But you
movie
know,
better than this.
Nuke is particularly, like we said, his whole character flaw is that he's the young dumb son of a bitch who got a signing bonus. So he just wants to throw his heat. Where Crash does make a very very good point in that, and I love these baseball movies because they are full of plenty of subtext as a result. With any elite player, they're gonna know exactly how to hit a fastball. That's like 1A. But Crash or Nuke seems to think that that's his bread and butter. That's gonna take him all the way to Cooperstown. And with anything, in order to be a master, you have to know the fundamentals, and fastballs are the fundamentals. You got to be able to throw that breaking ball.
And that's kind of an interesting thing because that's another reason why I say Eddie is just or Nuke is just a terrible pitcher. Because, yeah, he has a 95-mile-an-hour fastball that sometimes goes the right direction, but he has zero other game. And I guess that's why they bring in Crash, and like Annie kind of takes him under her wing to kind of develop him a little bit, but he is dense. He is so dense.
He's definitely dense, but again, it's all up to the with any skill. There's levels to that skill, and while on one level he might have been an absolute wizard, it's on this level he's kind of you're kind of getting hit with that harsh reality that, okay, I gotta step up my game, or it's feast or famine time. And unfortunately he's struggling with the feast bit, thinking that he's already full. But that's what Crash is for, is to teach him that you're gonna starve if you don't figure out another way to hunt. And that kind of pushes us along. The team goes on a road trip in the efforts to beat some teams on the road, and Nuke continues to suck. The team continues to struggle. They're in a bit of a losing streak, and after messing with the opposing team's sprinkler system to avoid another game of to break the losing streak, the team kind of breaks out of the funk, and especially Nuke, who starts to get his winning streak going.
By by going with a line of abstinence, he doesn't have sex with Annie, and he does some weird weird rituals to kind of keep himself in like a certain mindset, and then starts pitching like a madman. It's kind of I've seen some weird shit playing sports.
Yeah,
That
there's a
also
lot
that
of
whole
superstition in the Church of Baseball.
in the whole thing, I saw this in the movie, and I got sent back to when I used to play football in high school, and it was this guy, and he was rubbing a chicken bone on his bat, and he was like, "This is how you relieve a curse from your bat." And I knew a guy in my high school who did that to his cleats. He had a
Yep.
chicken bone crucifix that he would rub on his cleats before every game. I swear to God. And I was like, that is the weirdest thing. I thought he was the only person who did that, but he might have gotten it from this movie. Who knew?
No, sportsmen are incredibly superstitious, on all different types of levels. I mean, I've even seen some games recently in which a pitcher will come out on the mound with a mustache, and then he'll come out in the next inning and he'll have shaved the mustache off. Um, it's a
That's
very
gotta be
interesting
Yeah.
I was never like a super religious guy about it. I was never very superstitious. Of course, I never made it to the majors, but
If you were a little superstitious, you'd be, I don't know what position you played, but you'd be playing something for the Angels right now.
yeah, first base. But who's counting? If only I had that lucky pair of underwear.
There
Son
you
of a
go.
bitch. But we all have dreams, and they are shattered one day.
You sound so sad about this.
No, I mean, for God's sakes, it's like winning the lottery. I'm fine where I am.
Right?
Um,
We're gonna get into the
I'd
lottery wins in the next movie. Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
no kidding. I'd much rather be one of those guys who would be like, "Oh, it would have been fun to do it, but I'm okay with it," than one of these guys who's like, "Can't believe I never made it to the majors."
The guy who drinks himself to sleep every night after watching the Dodger game. He's like, I should have been there. I should have been at the show.
Yeah, it's like,
Oh.
dude, read a book. There's a whole world out there. But all that aside, we move along. As Nuke is in the throes of his sexless streak, he's certainly starting to get hot, and Crash is certainly still getting hot with him, hitting homers, and Sarandon is getting left out in the cold.
Sarandon is out in the cold, yes, because Eddie can't refuses to do anything with her until I guess they lose, where she kind of underhandedly plays a part in.
Yeah, and despite seduction, stockings, and etc., she still can't get into Nuke's pants, though she soon quickly figures out that Crash is behind this because they're kind of, at this point, competing for control of him. One wants to make sure that this kid gets a hold of himself and gets to the majors, while the other wants to get a hold of, well,
Something
the
else.
kid, but only a piece of him.
Yeah.
Um, Shit, what even happens after this?
You see, that's the thing with this movie. It gets really like kind of breaks down after a point. Okay.
Oh, well, yeah. So then, out of in the middle of all the streak and the sexual tension, we finally get a loss out of Nuke, and obviously that means that he can have his way with Sarandon. But as he goes to her house, she meets his dad and everything, but he gets a call that he's going up to the show.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest news that any baseball player can hear. And of course, that means that their relationship will be coming to an end because once he's gone for good, and she's got to move on to greener pastures.
I don't get that. Again, this is another thing where it all comes down to just like I just don't get some of the characters, and I think that's where my issue is coming in because so Susan Sarandon, she has Eddie wrapped around her finger. This guy's obsessed with her, completely and utterly devoted to her, like whatever. She could ride that Major League gravy train to a really nice, like solid gold, like Porsche. But she drops him as soon as he's about to go. Like, I get it, she ain't a gold digger, but like, let's be honest here.
I think this is one of those situations in which, again, every episode we find some sort of flaw, but I'm going to actually come to the defense of this one because I think there's two things about her character that kind of make this a necessary decision.
Mm-hmm.
One, baseball is a very superstitious game. She's got to stay behind in Durham and continue to doink the player of the year, as we'll call it, because that's how she keeps sending guys to the majors. And on top of this, she's got to stay in Durham because she's a Durham girl. She's just small town Sarandon, and it's just not the right move for her. It's just one of those things where I kind of like that it's this move where two adults kind of know it's like, well, that was fun, but I guess it's time to say goodbye.
It's one of those
And
things where they both know this is for the season. It's not forever.
yeah, it's just a fling, And well, that I especially think that that's what Nuke thought. I don't think he ever developed hard feelings for her like Crash and Sarandon have had this whole time. They've kind of had this weird sexual tension going on that they can't act on. because they're particularly
At each other's
uh,
throats over Eddie, over
yeah,
Nuke.
you know, and one wants to remain faithful of sorts, and one wants to remain faithful to his job of getting this kid to the majors. But this does give an opportunity for Crash to get in the pants of one little lady. And he does.
He does. They
Yeah, a lot.
they yeah, for like a couple days. That was a precocious lovemaking session they were in.
Yeah. But you know, as we kind of, it's weird because this movie does have a little bit of a weird ending to it.
It's such a really strange, like, structured story. And I think
Yeah,
that's like the thing that I'm coming around on.
because there's never really a, how would I put it? There's a really interesting setup with the whole love triangle, and in the setup of the movie, there's also some implied character conflict in that there will obviously be friction between Crash and Nuke over the heart of Sarandon, but it never really pans out because the story kind of goes to a different place. And while I don't totally mind it because again, it's just one of those movies where I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on the baseball, the jokes, and this is a very clever movie, but the writer kind of lost track of that all of that, and it just kind of became in the second half of the movie about Crash's like story of being a career minor leaguer and Sarandon being interested in that as a fan of baseball, but that was never in the setup. So it's kind of like, well, what are we really doing here?
It's kind of weird because the first act of this film feels like it's the second act of a different movie, where
Yeah,
it's like, oh, we're at the point where we're in Crash's story when he's at the low point of his thing, where he's like, oh, I just got sent down from the majors and back in this minor league thing. He's like, it's the Mighty Ducks thing, where it's like, oh, I was this hot shot, now I'm down here and I have to bum it with the minor leaguers and try and help this ragtag team get together or whatever. But it's not really that, but you get what I mean. And then it's like Nuke is, oh, he's the young hotshot who's, gonna go to the show, but he's almost there, but he needs to get his shit underway. And it's weird because don't get me wrong, I like it. It's interesting where it's these two parallel stories that kind of crash into each other. But the love triangle thing just doesn't come up for like an hour of this movie.
yeah, and more importantly, it doesn't even like finish itself off. I mean, really, what happens is that one piece of the triangle is sent away, and that's kind of hit the it for him. He seems to be a character that's supposed to have some sort of importance in the story, but really, all we end up getting by the end of it is that interview that he practiced with Crash, and it kind of looks like he'll just be another star prospect coming to the majors to be a part of the rotation for 10 to 15 years, which is good, good for Nuke, but that's all we ever really hear from him, aside from the fact that he also gets this god awful haircut.
Oh god, that haircut. Whew.
Yeah, it doesn't really suit Tim Robbins, nor the time. I mean, it looks like that kind of spiky haircut you'd expect a decade later, but
It looks like those
that's neither here nor
spiky.
there.
It's like the spiky haircut you saw in like every '90s boy band rocked this spiky, over gelled hair that you can tell was like solid as a rock because of like all like the weird shit that was in there. Yeah.
But aside from that, Crash gets a job for another minor league team. He hits his record-breaking home run, and Sarandon's kind of left like feeling a little empty. Both the men that she was very fond of are gone, one for better, one for worse. Um, and finally, we do get a little bit of satisfaction in that Crash comes home to get his girl and figure out what his next career move is as he's hanging up the cleats, and he's going to try his hand at being a manager. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the movie.
So, I think this movie deserves us to talk about it by itself for a little bit before we move on.
Sure.
So I gotta know, because it's like the characters, like I like the characters individually, I just don't think they work together. The story is just, there's good jokes in there, but it's the structure's kind of weird. There's like a whole love triangle aspect that kind of doesn't work out. You I need to know what's going on in this movie. Is the script not working? Were the actors not right? Was there like there's something not work? Is the direction off? Is there's something not working here and I can't figure out what it is. And I know you love this movies, but you got to give me something here.
Yeah, after having viewed it, like I'm sure I've probably seen this movie at least 10 times, as well as as a baseball player, it's a very traditional movie. It's like, you know, I don't know, an American family watching, or it's like watching a Christmas Story every year. It's that ingrained into the identity of being a baseball fan. But as also a movie guy, I've noticed certainly that what people continue to love about this movie isn't necessarily the story, it isn't the director, it isn't the lesson of the movie. It's all of like the popcorn stuff that's kind of the filler of the whole thing, right? It's the funny lines, which are amazing. I mean, I could read off some of my favorites here. As we know, I'm the player to be named later is one of my favorites, but there's also such hits as, from what I can hear, you couldn't hit water if you fell out of a fucking boat. I mean, that's a great line.
Don't get me wrong, the lines and the context of the scenes and all the other stuff, there's some funny shit in this movie where they're having the meet up at the plate and they're like, yeah, I don't know what to get him at for their wedding, and it's like in the middle of a fucking game. It's like, why don't you get him candlesticks? It's okay. Yeah, that's what I got my
Yeah,
wife for his thing. There's some funny stuff in this movie. Don't get me wrong. Like this movie, look, this is not even the worst movie we've seen for this show,
yeah,
but
far from it.
far from it. Like, well, hashtag wait till episode whatever, and we'll tell you all of our thoughts on the shitty movies we've watched. But
Yeah,
this movie is kind of strange because it hits every beat of like a standard like sports movie. It hits the beats of like a basic comedy. And it hits all these beats, but I don't know if they're just not resonating with me as a viewer, because I wasn't a baseball guy growing up. Like, I played Little League when I was in like elementary school, but all that stuff got dropped when I started playing football. Like, I
no,
was never a
I
baseball
think that's
kid.
a valid uh, thought or observation. A lot of sports movies resonate better with the fan of the sport than they do with the average goer. And while Durham probably came at a time in which
Everyone,
an incredible majority of the country was into baseball,
because
and not
this,
only into baseball, but the small town Americaness of this movie probably also resonated with audiences at the time. On top of the fact that this is a romantic comedy at heart, I mean that's really what this is.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think it's just one of those movies where kind of before the revolution of the science of movie making, this was just like a movie that people were like, I wrote this script that has a decent nugget of story in it, and then the producers were like, well, the script's really clever and it'll be cheap to shoot, so go shoot it. And then they went and shot it, and it was halfway decent. They had some stars in it at the time, and before you know it, they just have something that people will pay enough money and buy enough popcorn to go see. And there were some fun moments. It's like, it's not rocket science, but it gets the job done very well.
Is the definition of the comfy movie.
Yeah, definitely.
That's probably I'll give this movie 100%, 19 stars out of 5 for being a comfy movie to watch. This movie is a great movie to watch if you're just like, I want to just sit down, I want to enjoy myself. I don't want to like, watch weird art house or big block. I just want a comfy movie that's just nice and good and just easygoing. It's a very good, comfy, easygoing kind of movie. And I think that's the problem. I didn't come in it with that mindset. because I watched
Yeah.
Moneyball first, and then I watched Bull Durham, and I went in with it like that. Oh, this is gonna be like a really good like laugh out loud kind of sports movie, clever, all that stuff, and it's just comfy. It's just a very nice, wholesome kind of movie. So okay, it's a good. I like it. I like it better now with that kind of mindset.
I think that's a fair assessment to call it a comfy movie. I think this is definitely for the average baseball fan comfort food if you have any movie to turn to. Um, so yeah, I think that's a good assessment of it, and I'm willing to concede that point. I'll give that to you because yeah, I do think that the director's Ron Shelton, and if there was anybody I think to default this movie to as far as the errors in it, so to speak, Shelton would probably be the guy I would turn to. The only kind of famous movie he has to his name is White Men Can't Jump, oddly enough.
Yeah,
Um,
right. Wait, well,
which is
White
not,
Man Can't Jump is a masterpiece. All right,
yeah, exactly. But other than
come
that,
on.
it's like he doesn't have a whole lot to pick out of the fire, and that's fine because two good movies in your career, and that's pretty damn good if you ask me. But um,
I mean, not
yeah,
only two
it's
good movies, two like I mean, granted, Bull Durham, no matter what I say about it, like this movie is considered a classic. Because I did the
definitely.
research for it, and this tops so many lists for sports movies, comedies. People love this movie. It is beloved. Why Man Can't Jump? Like, I don't know about you, but like that's kind of a pretty loved movie around like, the circle I am in the sphere of. Like that's a really good movie. Woody Harrelson, I believe Wesley Snipes is also co-stars with him in the film. Like
Yeah.
that, it's a very good movie, and I mean, this guy, he knows how to direct, the sports movies, I guess would you'd say.
Yeah, it's a gem. It's a gem. America's pastime in a
America's weird
movie,
gem.
and yeah, I guess we're gonna move on to the movie that I think really gets to the heart of what it means to be a baseball fan in a moment. But
And this
before
is
that,
where we'll start talking about all the weird baseball shit.
oh yeah, this is where my people will probably start tuning out because David's gonna go a little nerd crazy here about baseball. But that you know what, listen in anyways because you'll learn something. You learn something new every day, and baseball is a sport that definitely has a lot for people to learn about. But before that, we're gonna get into a little bit of break, and we'll be back right after.
This.
Dean, I found a great way for us to do something cool and to make a little money on the side.
Ah, great. I've been looking for a new place to put my money. What do you got?
No investment needed. In fact, it's super easy, and there's creation tools we can use to record our podcast right from the phone or computer.
Wait, why would you record a podcast on your phone? You want? No, never mind. Where do I put my money for this?
I don't need any of your money. We can even get our podcast distributed to big streaming platforms like Spotify and Google Podcasts.
Oh, I get it now. We're talking big business here. Okay, so you're gonna need a lot of money from me. How much money are we talking here?
No, definitely don't need any of your money. In fact, we can make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership.
Okay, now I think I'm getting what you're going at here. We need to spend money to make money, so we're talking some big gains here. Big gains.
No, definitely no. I don't need any of your money. Just all we need to make a podcast right in one place.
Okay. So what you're telling me is that you're gonna need a pretty big check from me for this podcast. So do I just make it out to cash? Because it's no problem for me. I'll just write it up right now.
No, listen, Dean, just head over to anchor.fm and check it out. You'll see why Anchor is the best place for us to record, edit, and distribute our podcasts. And I definitely do not need any of your money.
Shut up and take my money. And welcome back.
Yes, welcome back. Now we're going to be getting into the Aaron Sorkin film Moneyball from 2012. What a film. Lovely little piece with Brad Pitt at the helm, playing Billy Beane, the real-life general manager of the Oakland A's in the early 2000s, in which he navigates the team through the muddy waters of
being a really, really
2002.
poor team in the
Yeah.
2000s.
What, I really haven't been a happy baseball fan since 2002 when I was 5 years old. It's so depressing to be an Angels fan right now, but
Oh, I
that's a
know.
separate story for a separate time.
That's a separate story for after we talk about the movie and we get to harp on baseball for a little bit.
No, I'm sure I'll make a video about it eventually. But this movie, what a film! We open on a Mickey Mantle quote and cut right to footage of the 2001 American League Division League Series, which is kind of like the first round of Major League Baseball's playoffs at the time.
Mhm.
Um, that's where basically there's 8 teams that make it to the playoffs. Well, I guess there's 10 teams that make it to the playoffs because at the time there wasn't a wild card game. It was just there was a wild card team. And then those 8 teams all duke it out um, in an 8-team tournament style postseason. And the first division league. Anyways, I'm getting way too specific into this, but there's
Yeah.
5 game division league series and championship and World Series, and the Oakland Athletics were playing the New York Yankees.
The money team of baseball.
Yeah, America's team, as they are most honestly known, and at that time, definitely known as like the New York Yankees. I mean, they had deep pockets beyond anybody's belief, but that's kind of what you get when you're the most successful team in baseball history. I don't know why everybody's fairly surprised by it.
It's
I
really
mean,
weird because like the New York Yankees, like I know people who have what they've never watched baseball. Like you can tell they've never watched a baseball game in their life. They have no idea. They couldn't name one Yankees player, but they like wear the Yankees gear. They're diehard Yankees fans just because they're like, oh, Babe Ruth played for the Yankees. Oh yeah, of course I'm a Yankees fan. It's
yeah,
really weird. It's like the Yankees just absorb like really casual baseball fans. It's the Yankees and the Dodgers absorb casual baseball fans.
Yeah, I mean, they're two teams from the biggest cities in America. The Yankees have been around since 1900 and something. Aside from maybe the Boston Red Sox, they are one of the most successful old teams in baseball. There's older teams like the Cincinnati Reds are the first team to have been founded in the modern roster of major league teams, but they are certainly not as successful. The Athletics also have been around. I mean, they used to be the Philadelphia Athletics, but again, not as successful. And they are not successful again, as in 2001, they do lose that game to the Yankees, who eventually go on to play the Mets or no, I believe they play the Diamondbacks and then lose on a walk-off base hit. But neither here nor there. The end of that season kind of leaves them in a bit of a bind because their 2 stars, Johnny Damon and Jason Giambi, um, will be leaving because the team can't pay for them. Their contracts are too expensive, and all they have is a measly $40 million to work with. Doesn't seem like pennies, but it's definitely in the eyes of the major league contract. I mean, I think they list at one point that Johnny Damon was asking for 7.5 million a year in negotiations,
Mhm.
and the Boston Red Sox are able to offer him 7.75 million a year.
That's a
Nowadays, that I guess back then it was a premier contract, but nowadays that's like chump change. It's average.
you wouldn't get out of your bed for 7.5 if you're a pro ball player and you had a name, you wouldn't get out of bed for 7.5.
No, at that point you might be a platoon guy or like maybe a regular reliever, but nowadays, I mean, I think the records for the biggest major league contracts were set this past season on all sorts of levels, from all-time best contract to the best pitching contract, and all of them go between like 30 to 40 million a year. You know, I
Jesus
think the
Christ.
the largest one was our local namesake Mike Trout, the who will become the greatest player to ever play the game.
Give
He's
it time,
getting
boys.
paid across 10 or 12 years, like $430 million total.
Wait, wait, how much? I had to.
$430 million. You did hear that correctly.
Wait, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's a
The
lot of
Avengers
scrap.
didn't cost that much to make. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the Avengers. That guy's making more than it cost to make Avatar.
Yep, but he kind of deserves it because, like I said, he is statistically, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, statistically going to be, or is at least on track to be, the greatest player who ever played the game. And the Angels somehow got a hold of him. But, again, another story for another time, of which it is very interesting to figure out. But in this story that we're following in this biopic, Brad
Also,
Pitt
I
is,
I do want to point out that I did look it up. That guy's making double what it cost to make Avatar.
yeah, it's
Fuck me,
ungodly.
I got into the wrong business. Jesus Christ. All right.
All of us do. But he also is built like a linebacker, so go figure.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, anyway, so Billy Bean obviously has a tall task ahead of him. He's losing both of his star players, and when you lose, or really three of his star players, Damon and Giambi are the only like national namesake on the team. You definitely lose a lot when that happens, because baseball is a game of scoring runs, and when two of your top scoring producers leave, you're not going to be able to win games. So now he's kind of left with this thing where he goes to the owner of the team to ask for more money, um, and is denied because apparently he doesn't have it. Though I would suspect that he probably has it. This is an interesting analysis that has actually recently come up. But whereas most major league teams currently, which is 20 years later, uh, they generally have a player budget of around 150 to 200 million dollars nowadays,
Yeah.
and the team
And if we're
most
adjusting it
often,
for back then, it's probably like half that, right?
yeah, it's probably doubled in size since then. The teams are normally worth anywhere from $2 to $3 billion because that's also counting like ticket sales, the branding of the team, the owning of the stadium, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It all adds up to $2 or $3 billion at the end of the day. And that's just like a piece of the owner's portfolio and his business dealings because these owners aren't specifically working for the team. They just bankroll the team and then are also moguls of you know, like I think the Twins are into like they're from like this coal mining business, or something
Well,
like
a
that.
big one is Ted Turner because he owned the Atlanta Braves and he also, Turner Broadcast, WCW,
Right, a very
yeah.
very big broadcasting mogul, of which I think they're actually now owned publicly by a broadcasting group. Um, I think the Angels are owned. They're owned by Artie Moreno, who got his money from advertising. I think is what people say, but he has a lot of family in Mexico who have a lot of money. Um, but
But
that's
back
neither
to
here
the
nor there.
movie.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess that's just explaining this whole thing that like the guy probably has money but is unwilling to give it up to a team that's not going to be able to win in the postseason
Mm.
with two star players. Um, because at that point he'd have to put up tens of millions of dollars to get anything decent for Billy to work with. So then
And that's Billy's big conflict in the movie is they're a team that has not a lot of money to back up the
yeah,
big stars.
it's putting his job in jeopardy. So he's sent back to his scouting room to kind of rebuild the roster, and um, his scouts are giving him the whole rundown of like, this guy's swing looks good, this guy's built well. There's a really good line in this initial scouting scene in which one of the scouts mentions that he player has an ugly girlfriend, which means he's got no self confidence.
I don't know
Um,
why I laughed I laughed my ass off in that line.
oh yeah, I mean I think this is the first hint of it being a Sorkin film. Sorkin films are known for having a lot of witty dialogue. They're known for a lot of having a lot of monologues and snappy dialogue.
Sorkin just writes so much dialogue in his films.
Yeah, unsurprising because he comes from the stage. I mean, originally, A Few Good Men was supposed to be a stage play that he wrote on his in between intermissions while he was working the door at a theater in New York, while also battling apparently a very serious
Strong coke.
cocaine addiction.
Like, again, like, this is what I keep hearing, and I'm like, man, I should really start doing just tons of blow. Because
Yeah,
all
you
these
know,
great directors and writers just do a shit ton of blow, and then they become great.
yeah, you're kind of right because it feel like at 24 I should have like 10 scripts by now at that point, but maybe cocaine would have done that for me.
Right? Scorsese, he did so much blow and made how many Oscar-worthy films in that time?
Yeah, he also
Jesus.
threatened to kill himself to Paramount Studios or something like that.
And then he
So,
made Raging Bull. Like, come on! Like,
yeah, you know, it's a give and take relationship.
let me just do a speedball and make The Godfather real quick. All right.
Yeah. But you know, Billy's up against it, and he's in negotiations with Team for Pieces. He is in negotiation with Damon for salary, and he's basically losing every battle. But when he heads over to I think the Cleveland Indians organization, he comes across this internish guy in the room who's whispering to the owner or the general manager of the Indians. Um, and this is where we get our first glimpse of
Jonah Hill.
yeah, Jonah Hill playing. If
Peter something?
it's Peter Brand.
Peter from Yale.
Yes, Peter is a Yale graduate who is whiz kid with numbers and technology and yada yada yada. And after a tense interrogation by Billy Bean, he spills the beans in that he's basically trying to suggest to the organization that you need to start scouting players based on their statistics, not based on
Gut
their
feeling.
stuff. Yeah, and this
What?
is actually a much more important piece of baseball history than even the movie makes it out to be. Nowadays, statistical analysis and sabermetrics, as they're actually labeled, are such an important part of the game that actually come from this specific story. So really pay attention to this because if you go and look at the modern analysis of the game, I mean, no kidding, this movie really highlights the revolution in the way baseball is played. And Peter Brand is at the forefront of that.
That was the thing about this movie that they were talking about, and I was it weirded me out because how the scouts are talking about it. It's like, hey, this math and science you're talking about, this bullshit doesn't say anything about my gut feeling about this high school kid from Oklahoma. Like, was it really that archaic? Did these guys literally just say, you know what, this kid looks good, cute girlfriend, confident, got a good arm, fuck it, we'll take him. And they just didn't look at his stats or what?
Well, so I think there's an interesting parallel to be made, coincidentally, with this movie and to Bull Durham, right? In Bull Durham, Nuke is scouted based on his ability to throw a 95 mile per hour fastball. But when you think about it, a 95 mile per hour fastball it's a statistic in itself, right?
Yeah.
They're able to measure the skill based on speed.
Mm.
And that in baseball is very baseline. Like, yeah, if a guy can throw a pretty fast fastball, hitters are going to have to work really hard to catch up to it. Ergo, he's worth something. But that's kind of like a skill that really was fairly new to the 70s and 80s. I mean, measuring pitch speed, I'm not sure, but I don't think was very popular until then. And that was kind of all a whole lot of what people had to go off of. I mean, the statistics of baseball have been kept track of for the entire history of the sport, basically.
Yeah.
But
You
it
can
was
look
never.
up, 19 or 1888 like World Series, whatever. You can look up statistics for that and they're all accurate.
Oh
People
yeah,
love their
and
baseball.
I mean, people keep their. It's like a thing in baseball for even fans to be keeping the box score of the game. They have their stat book out. They mark everything, and this was kind of like at the burgeoning there's an interesting thing here in which technology is kind of a piece of the film, in a literary sense, and you kind of get to see like this is the first time that computers were able to accurately and efficiently keep track of statistics. There's stats analysis going on, beyond just like keeping stats. There's also like calculating stats now. Like I guess when you put it one way, there's actual like the academic pursuit of statistics. There's slow motion replay. There's a whole bunch of these technological advances to the game that get you to analyze it in a more advanced way
Mm.
that obviously are not present in Bull Durham. And that's kind of like the two worlds that are competing here. Is there's the old world of Bull Durham where you kind of eyeball the game and you can see what's good. And then there's like this new world order in which you can really analyze what and what isn't good. Uh, because there's a really good line later in the movie in which Billy is talking to a scout, and he mentions that he doesn't have a crystal ball. And as much as you'd like to say that you know what stuff a guy has, you honestly have no clue. You're just kind of going based on this superstitious, conditioned
Archaic way of
tradition
thinking.
of like, yeah, I guess this is what's good because this is what I've been told is good. Now they finally have a way to figure this out. And that's kind of what's being set up is Billy's buying into Peter's analysis of the game and that it will be the new world order. And now they kind of get to go on this messianic journey together to see if it's really going to work.
Yeah. And this is kind of where the part of the movie where we get to the really interesting stuff, because what we just explained is literally how Peter kind of explains to Billy how this is supposed to work. So they pick up these three new players that are all kind of like they've basically either been like forgotten, had put no one put faith in, or just kind of broken and beat up. The ragtag group of team. Also, Chris Pratt is in this movie. I had no idea Star Lord played baseball, but there you go.
Yeah, I also forgot that he starred in this, and it's a very subtle role if you really think about it. He
Mm.
he shows up in places, but I mean it's a steal when you think about it.
Yeah, well, granted, this came out in 2011, so this was this post Parks and Rec? Because I know Parks and
Mm,
Rec is what
no,
he
Parks and Rec was
started with.
definitely in the middle of this. Um,
Sorry, hashtag middling research. What are we getting?
the original release of Parks and Recreation started in 2009, so they're probably in season 2 or 3 at this point. But he was
Yeah.
definitely a regular on the show at that time.
Okay, so this is like he's in the middle of Parks and Rec, then Guardians of the Galaxy, which basically blew him up career wise like crazy, didn't come out
Yeah.
till a couple years after. So I mean
No,
they
Guardians of the Galaxy I know came out after I was out of high school, so it had to have been even like in the second half of the decade. I don't even think he was close to that yet.
yeah. So I mean like they hey, if you want to see Chris Pratt before he got real big, there you go.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting because he does have this like small town America scrappiness to him that
Mhm.
what he had in Parks and Recreation. Obviously, in Parks and Rec, he was able to show off his charisma, but here he does a really good job of just like reining it in and playing like the nervous baseball guy. Of which I actually really like this half of the movie because there's this half that has to do with the whole statistical analysis and like the business of baseball, but there's the other half that like clearly acknowledges, um,
The human
with every
factor.
yeah, the human factor in that this is what the scouts are harping on is that the human factor of the sport is how we play the game. But in all reality, and Peter Brand points this out in one of the players that they pick out, the human element isn't really what these scouts do. It's really what these scouts do is just based on stupid tradition, because there's the pitcher they pick out, Bradford. Um, he's what's called the submarine pitcher, who instead of throwing overhand to the plate, throws literally knuckle to the ground. Um,
Which is so weird. Like it looks like he's gonna snap his arm when he throws the ball.
Yeah, and that's how they even say that is it's he's forgotten about and thought of as a joke because people think he pitches weird. But I'm telling you, some of the best pitchers who have ever played the game, most of them are relievers, but they are submarine pitchers, and it's a super effective method of pitching to a batter because when you know all this talk of pitchers, when you have a good fastball, okay, but then you need a good breaking ball. Well, when all your pitches look like a breaking ball because they're literally coming from a mirrored spot from the mound, it's super jarring as a batter. I've never faced one myself, but virtually I have because I play MLB The Show, and it sucks. It's super disorienting to face a submarine pitcher.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
as we move on, they pick out their ragtag group of players. We learn a little bit more about Billy, his past, where he came from. We learn that he's a divorced dad, and that's another thing. Brad Pitt just looks like a divorced dad in this movie. If
yeah.
he
Also,
became a
a really good C story to this movie.
yeah, it's a lot of interesting stuff here because we're dealing with not only the story of this kind of like middling kind of falling apart down on their luck team and this sort of like the revolution that they're doing in the sport. We're also dealing with the story of these guys who are getting a new lease on the game, the story of Billy trying to fight the head office and kind of reconnect with his kid, which is all really interesting.
Yeah,
Also, to make a point about Billy's backstory, because around this time is when we start getting the flashbacks. So the big thing about Billy, Brad Pitt's character, is that he gave up a full ride scholarship to Stanford to go play for the Mets when he got out
hmm
of high school, if I'm not mistaken, right? Back in like the
yeah. He
70s.
is. He's drafted by the Mets. I think it's around the '80s actually,
Hmm,
because he was on a team with Strawberry, who I
yeah.
believe was in the '80s. And then he's kind of, as we learn later in the movie, bounced around after that. The initial debut for the Mets doesn't work out.
Also, that's another thing. They try and play it up. It's like, oh man, you should have, you didn't know. You should have gone to Stanford. You should have, tried to make up that backup plan, all that. But David, I'm be real here. You're 19 years old. You're offered either a full ride scholarship to Stanford or to go play baseball with the Mets. Is that even a decision? Is that to
For
all
most
our
of us,
viewers out there? Is that even a choice? Because they
for
they offer
most,
him a shit ton of money.
yeah, exactly. And it's like for most of people, no, it's not even a choice. You go play for the Mets. The Mets, especially at a time when they had a lot of stars and had a lot of potential to go win in the postseason. I mean, yeah, it's. I think that's what I really much like about his backstory is especially because it's based on Billy Bean was an actual major league player. This is a biopic. Um, it's very interesting to think about that choice of you could fulfill your dream now or maybe go play for Stanford, who are they're a top baseball school anyway.
Mm.
So you might get drafted later, but that's kind of the thing you face here is, well, why not go do it now? You have your chance now. Why give it up? And obviously that manifests, and he wasn't ready for the show, and he can't handle it, and then that has a terrible foundation built for him for the rest of his career, which fizzles out. And there's a lot of what ifs that are going on here. What if I could have been, because this is actually a really good scene later, a little later. What if I could have gone to school and then been drafted later? He asked Brand, when you where would you have drafted me? And then instead of being patronizing and saying it would have been a first round pick, Brand is honest and says ninth round, no signing bonus, and in all reality, I probably would have bounced you. Which
Jeez.
that's like in baseball speak, that's rough because ninth round is pretty deep. No signing bonus is almost an insult, as if to say we're only picking you because you're a fluff piece. We don't actually have a whole lot of faith in you. We don't want to spend more money on you. And then to say he's going to bounce him to just really says, as a statistical analyzer, I really think that it would just be because I need to waste a pick.
Now, on that note of ninth round picks, so I know you're not a football guy, you're a baseball guy, but I'm a football guy, and my favorite team is the Green Bay Packers. Will be until
Mm.
I die. Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, who is a future Hall of Famer. That man is one of the greatest quarterbacks playing the game today. He was a ninth round draft. I think he might have been a 14th round draft pick. Like, he was low, but they picked him up, and that's kind of one of those interesting things where some people it works in the same way as in this movie. They didn't know what they had at the time until they got him onto the field and actually saw it's like, oh wait, you're actually like, the weird shit about you doesn't really mean anything. It's how you play the game. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
kind of the weird poetry of sports drafting. Some first round picks have gone on to be absolute crap, and some 27th round picks, or even like guys who come out in like the amateur draft or something like this, have gone on to be really solid or even Hall of Fame baseball players.
Oh yeah.
I think one of my favorite draft stories is there was a guy who played for the Padres or the Braves, I can't remember, in the 70s, who was drafted to the team and became one of their star power hitters after a scout discovered him in a military softball game when he was like 27.
Mm.
And then he went on to have like a 10-year career.
See, again, scouts don't know shit, and that's basically what this movie is telling everyone.
Yeah, I mean, sports are incredible sometimes. So I guess if we move on, the team finally has gotten their picks and now becomes this kind of, it lasts for 20 to 30 minutes. There's this dance between Billy and the rest of the organization on, they think he's lost his mind in picking the people they have. The specific three picks that are named are obviously Chris Pratt plays Hatterberg, who's supposed to be playing first base for them. Um, Bradford is this submarine pitcher who's going to be one of their best relievers. And then Jason Giambi, the brother of, well, no, it's Jeremy Giambi, the brother of Jason Giambi, is supposed to be another replacement for him. All of them are highlighted because the crux of their strategy is they want to get the guys who have a decent on base percentage. Basically, they want to replace the on base percentage of that which Damon, Giambi, and the other star were supposed to have created for the team, which averages about 364. That means you're getting on base about a little over a third of the time, which is good in baseball, you know. Um, and if you get on base, a third of the time, that means you're getting on once or twice a game, creating scoring chances, which means wins. And these three guys, even though they are rejects in other aspects of the sport, are statistically going to be able to do that for the team and on their budget. So like I said, there's kind of there's several scenes of him, Billy butting heads with the scouts, Art Rowe, the manager of the team. Um, Shoot, who else? I mean,
Basically, everyone who is not Peter, he is butting heads with.
yeah, pretty much everybody's like, well, these guys are gonna suck, and
You're
we'll be able
ruining
to
the
tell you.
team,
Yeah, the manager's like, I'm not playing these guys. You hired me to manage my team. Let me manage my team. And Billy's like, you need to play these guys because they're going to do well for you. But he instead wants to play people like Pena, who's supposed to be one of their star first base prospects, because Chris Pratt, Hatterberg, he's a catcher. He doesn't actually even know how to play first base. They have to actually teach him.
The only reason they put him on first base is because he can't be a catcher anymore because he has nerve damage in his arm. Is that what they
He,
said?
yeah, that specifically makes it so that he can't throw, but you don't need to throw when all you're doing is catching the ball at first base. Um, and we kind of get through to the first half of the or like really the first month of the season, which the A's suck. They're not playing the guys that Billy has hired, and the management strategy isn't working out. So really, they're going like 9-14. They're losing even more games than that, and it's all looking pretty bad.
It only gets to the point until Billy takes matters into his own hands and trades away and dumps a bunch of players, so the management is forced to play the players he has picked.
Yeah, this is actually to talk about the writing for a moment. I know, again, this is all based on true events, but this is, I think, a really good lesson for any writer in you know your subject before you go to write your movie. And like I said, while Sorkin has the source material of the book that this movie is based on in order to craft the plot, highlighting this as one of the major like points of conflict and like one of the ways that the character can take action to ramp up or solve conflict in the movie is really genius in my mind because when you think about it, if this movie wasn't based on real events, what's the most like dramatic way you can make Billy and the manager butt heads? Well, you won't play my guy. I'm going to get rid of the guy that you're playing because you got to do what I say. I'm the boss around here. I mean, that's, perfect.
Yeah. Also, this is the weirdest thing because they're doing the whole trade off and all that other stuff, and it is the most like tense, dramatic, like conference call I've ever watched. It is so weird how the dialogue just carries this movie like so
Yeah,
well.
because I think that's the crux of Sorkin's dialogue too. Is yeah, the dialogue is deep in subtext and very detailed. He's a very you can tell how well read Sorkin is whenever he writes his movies because there's so much detail in the movement and texture of the characters. But just as well, his dialogue is always accompanied by very meaningful like micro movements, right? With the fist pumping when they make the moves, the hanging up and the picking up of calls on the phone. um, it's all these very visual behaviors that are accompanying this very dense dialogue to really carry the scene.
Hmm. It's very interesting. Hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Um,
But as we move on,
as we move on, now it's past trade deadline. Pena has been shoved off. There's this really interesting. I mean, there's so many different storylines in this movie, and this is probably getting into the D story. But we have this interesting story that we follow with Jonah Hill's character Peter Brand in that he doesn't really have too much of a character flaw besides this in that he's a stats guy, but he needs to get a handle on the human element of the game, right?
yeah, he needs
And
to
this
get
is
to the reality of like being a manager of a team isn't just picking the best players, it's also cutting the worst players.
yeah, exactly. And there's this cool scene where Pitt tries to coach him through cutting a player, and it's crashing and burning for Brand. But he finally has to deliver some bad news to a player when they trade Pena away. He is tasked by Billy Bean to go give Pena the news. And he gives him the advice earlier that, just tell him straight up they're Major League Baseball players, they can handle it. And, Pena's a pretty imposing guy. He's a built Latino player with a shaved head. He looks like the kind of guy who's going to beat you up and then take your girl.
Yeah. Hashtags to steal your girl. I'm gonna keep the
Yeah,
hashtags going.
and then they go into a little meeting room together, and he sits him down and just gives it to him straight. You've been traded to the Detroit Tigers. Here's the number for the guy who will facilitate all your affairs. Good luck to you. And
Is that a downgrade or an upgrade getting traded to the Tigers?
at the time, probably an upgrade. I don't know what happened to Pena. Um, Frankly, aside from Jeremy Giambi, I really don't know what happened to a lot of these players. None of like the star players for the Oakland Athletics over the next 5 years are listed in the film.
Mm.
Um, I mean, Hatterberg, I don't know what happened to him. Bradford might have had a good career after all this. Jeremy Giambi was bounced around a bunch of teams after this. Basically living in the shadow of Jason Giambi.
It is kind of interesting how, like, because this is also another point of the movie, it's kind of laissez-faire how much Brad Pitt and Billy Bean trades and moves all these players around and talks about them, because it's weird because they're talked about like product.
Yeah,
They're
they're chess
very,
pieces.
yeah, they're chess pieces. They're very dehumanized when Billy's talking about them. And I think that's kind of an interesting point of the movie, and kind of gets back towards like the thing where it's like they forget that once they remove the human element of baseball, they're able to look at it in a different way. Because that's what the scouts are looking at. They're looking at the human element of baseball, and that's what they're deciding on. And Billy and Peter, they're looking at it from a completely like alien, like there's no human element. We're just looking at the pure numbers. We're looking at the hard facts we can quantify. And when you do that, you lose that bit of like humanity when you do this to these guys. Because Pena disappears. He has to cut the one ball player that has like the bum knees, and that's kind of a painful scene when you watch it, because like he doesn't even cut him and trades him off. He literally just says, yeah, no, you're not getting traded off to like the Tigers, the Cubs. You're getting dropped. You're going down to AAA.
Yeah, and it is interesting that you say that because I think that's the whole crux of the movie is finding a balance between those two. But for Billy, especially in that bit, even though he's following his own advice, you can certainly see the pain in it because he's been through that as a major leaguer. So it's even worse to have to go through. As we do see through the rest of the flashbacks, a lot of what he's doing in this movie is because he wants to be good at his job, but is also because he wants to find retribution for the pain that he found in his own professional career.
Yeah,
Um,
because as we discover in the film, Billy was a pretty poor ball player once he made it into the major league.
yeah, they found the best Brad Pitt lookalike to play a young Billy Bean.
Yeah,
Eh,
Brad Pitt lookalike is charitable. I don't think he looks anything like Brad Pitt.
oh, I think for what Brad Pitt looks like in this movie, they did a really good job. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, his career was marred by a crisis of confidence, and it's kind of summed up in this whole he's bounced around, he's angry until officially he makes the decision to just become a scout in the athletics organization.
Hmm.
Um, and he eventually, I mean, personally, defined a way from being a scout to the general manager of a team, which is, aside from being the owner, the highest position you can have within an organization.
Hmm.
Um, Good. I mean, that's a pretty damn good job.
He's yeah, like his true calling was probably being a scout and being in a managerial position than a player. If he skyrockets that fast, because in the
Yeah.
movie, I think they say this happens over the course of like only like 10 years or something like that. He goes from being a scout to being a general manager.
Yeah, which is a fair bit of promotion, but even then, to get that high up in the organization is a pretty damn good job. Well done. And that job well done is still a work in progress as we continue along through. At this point, the trading away gives Hatterberg, Bradford, Giambi is traded away because of his, and this is actually true. Jeremy Giambi was a delinquent, basically.
Hmm.
Um,
He was a party animal, lovingly would say.
yeah, I think as one line puts it, he has more comps in Vegas than he does in Oakland.
Hmm.
Um, he finally is traded away because he's too much of that party animal. And now that it's kind of left up to for the team to do their thing, finally make the experiment what Brand and Bean have set out to do work, and it's working actually. They through this next bit of the movie can start and continue to go on what would later be the longest winning career in Major League Baseball history.
The greatest run
Yeah,
ever.
20 games long and counting. Um, it was that season for which for me personally as an Angels fan, I will forever know as the Angels' only championship year. Uh, Aside from that, that was kind of the highlight of the season. That the Oakland Athletics had done this. Because this is also on the backdrop of an interesting time in baseball in which 2001 was like the last year of primetime American League baseball. Um, After this, it kind of declines from America's pastime to the 2000s, where Major League Baseball is a really good ESPN sport, but isn't really America's thing anymore. America was more focused on football.
It's kind of weird when you think about it, because throughout like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way up to like basically until this movie, baseball was everything. Like
Yeah.
you watched, everybody watched baseball. And now it kind of just sort of fizzled a little bit. I don't know how
Yeah,
big like the baseball scene is in like pop culture anymore.
yeah. I mean, Dean, we've had a conversation about this, obviously, in that I'm very interested in this sort of descent into madness that Major League Baseball has had over the past 20 years. But um, there's definitely an interesting milieu here in that this is, again, geniusly the kind of, I think it's like my favorite part of the movie, aside from the soundtrack, which that song that shows up a few times with the cymbal crashing and the echoing guitar.
Oh yeah.
That's actually become like everybody's favorite song to make like baseball edits to. I mean,
They
it's
hit
very,
it on the head for this movie.
yeah, it's a very skin crawling, chilling song of hope and dash dreams. But uh,
What is it with baseball movies and dash dreams? All baseball movies have a guy whose like dreams were broken because of this game. It's so weird.
well, when it's America's pastime, I mean, there's a lot of people who dream of being Babe Ruth and then end up being, um,
Hashtag to be named later.
yeah, I mean,
Player to
honestly,
be named later.
yeah, or player to have been most likely canned in high school. Um,
Player most likely to get caught shooting up in between games.
yeah, honestly, which is actually an interesting story about my high school baseball team that I'll tell you later in private. But
Ooh,
uh,
buddy.
yeah, either way, it's like this run of 20 games is really where we get that full on baseball bump of coke.
The montage. This is where we get the sports part of the sports movie.
Yeah, nothing but wins, nothing but happy fans. Billy's loving it. Peter Brand's loving it, and we finally get to this 20th game. They're gonna get their 20 game win streak. They're gonna break the record. Um, and it's kind of like this false climax to the movie, right? It's like the plot's climax, but it's not Billy's climax. Though it's kind of, as I've labeled it, it's this false climax because there needed to be some sort of sports movie victory here.
Yeah.
Because as we'll later learn that it doesn't all end in victory, but this is a really cool sequence because Billy's whole thing is that he doesn't watch the games, right?
Yeah. He doesn't.
Out
He
of,
thinks he's a jinx to his
yeah, out of
team.
superstition and I think some hurt feelings about his own career, he feels like watching the games it would attach him too much emotionally to the sport that he's been hurt by. Understandable and actually a really good character flaw, I think. Um, but this 20th game, I think, obviously, I mean, he tunes into the radio and it's 11-0. It's basically in the bag at that point. I mean, that's a blowout win for baseball, and he makes this mad dash to get off the freeway and get back to the stadium.
Because he's like, there's no way I can jinx it this bad where we lose an 11-point lead.
Yeah, time
Then you look
to,
at the Falcons and the Patriots where you blow a 42-point lead. How?
yeah, no
Uh,
kidding. But it's time to feast instead of famine. So he makes his way back to the stadium, and that's when disaster starts to strike. The Kansas City Royals, the team they're playing, just start to go on a rally, and they gain back all 11 points. And it's kind of come down to this extra innings battle in which there's again another interesting choice that I don't know if it's true or not, because again, sometimes in biopics we embellish the truth for story's sake.
Mm.
The manager of the Athletics, who has been a staunch opponent of Billy Beane's strategy of managing the team, finally makes the decision to give in to the idea and put Hatterberg in as a pinch hitter. And Hatterberg's whole thing has been like, he can get walks, he can get on base. And that's his idea, is that, okay, he'll get on base, that's a base runner, and that means that a run scored, we walk off win. Because in baseball, the home team, if they walk off basically baseball, as everybody knows, is played top of the inning, bottom of the inning. The home team always hits in the bottom of the inning, and if the home team scores at the bottom of the inning, that's the home field advantage you get. The opposing team doesn't get a chance to answer in the next half inning. The game is just over. So
yeah, you basically you break the symmetry and you win.
Yeah, and so Hatterberg is pinch hit to get on base, but to everybody's surprise, smashes the ball into
the stratosphere.
Yeah, I mean, no kidding, because knowing this as a baseball fan, Oakland Coliseum, which they still play in to this day, is a tough home run ballpark. It was built at a time when the Oakland Raiders played there for a number of years.
Yeah, and it's big.
It's big. It's half football stadium. It has the biggest foul territory margins in all of Major League Baseball, and it also has some tough fences to hit over because they're tall and deep. So he smashes this ball, and it's a walk-off win for the Athletics. They get their 20th win. We get this nice little victory, but there's still this interesting conflict that brings us back to the A story of Billy needing to win that last game of the season, which obviously means you need to win the World Series. You need to get a championship, or what was it all for,
Only matters when you're the winner.
Exactly. The victor writes the history books is, I guess, the lesson we can learn from this one. And pretty quickly, the story kind of resolves that, in that we get in that postseason, it was the Minnesota Twins versus the Oakland Athletics in one half of the ALDS, and the Anaheim Angels versus the New York Yankees in the other half of the ALDS. The Twins beat the Athletics in the playoff series, of which the Angels would then go on to beat them, and then the Giants to win the World Series that year. And that leaves Billy Beane's Athletics at the bottom of the pile, despite the fact that they were, to get to the postseason at that time, especially when less teams did so.
They were also back-to-back years they made postseason.
Exactly, and then especially to do it on a budget with no star players, it should be something that anybody should be proud of, especially, given the circumstances. And Peter tries to make that point, little Jonah Hill tries to reconcile with Billy that, what they did was very important and gave a lot of people in baseball a lot of hope. This is another one of my favorite scenes in the movie, in which he shows him video of a minor league player who's 240 pounds and afraid to run to second base because he can't run for shit.
He's slow, he's fat, he ain't, yeah.
Yeah. Peter plays back the video of him crushing a ball and then tripping over first base because he's afraid he can't make it to second for the double. And everybody has to, tap him on the shoulder and be like, dude, you crushed that ball 60 feet over the fence.
You hit a home run. Slam. Yeah, just make the run.
That's in a roundabout way. I think there's a little bit of the meaning of the story lost on both Billy and me as a viewer, because it's not a complete parallel. But I think there's this this interesting bit in which we get, and we kind of get this in Bull Durham too, this hope that baseball provides people sometimes because it's such a deep and populated sport that even the rejects have a chance to make something happen.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then we get this kind of true resolution to the story in which Billy is offered a contract by the Boston Red Sox to be the general manager of the team. Everybody dreams of being in the organization of like the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, America's teams. And while that's something that Billy seems to really cherish, he struggles over wanting to have done it in Oakland and wanting to do it on his terms. Um, and obviously, as a biopic classically always does, we just get pretty
The
much text over
text over the
screen.
yeah.
Yeah, at the end of everything. And Billy Bean to that day was still trying to win the final game of the season, and the Athletics themselves have struggled to win the final game of the season since to this day they still haven't. Though they're
Have
certainly more primed than ever to do it. They have star players nowadays, probably the best third baseman in all of baseball plays for them, but who knows if they ever will? Who knows?
who knows? Well, that was Moneyball. And I'd have to say the dialogue in this movie was great. The acting was great. The story was good. But I don't know which one of these movies I actually like better. I know I came into this kind of hating on Bull Durham, but now talking about it, I got a little bit of a different. I'm looking at it with some different eyes. I'm looking at this movie, and after talking about it, I kind of realize how kind of dry it is. It's a pretty dry bioepic when you really think about it.
Yeah, this movie certainly struggled with. I think I made a note that there's a weird balance between the subtext of the movie and the exposition of the movie, where there's a lot of good moments in which the heart of the sport is able to be communicated through the subtext, but at the same time, there's so much exposition that's required because of the sabermetrics, the statistical analysis of the sport, um, that it kind of gets bogged down a little bit
It's
because there's a lot of things that the average viewer could understand, like the whole moving players, the players getting a second chance, but then it's like Sorkin's tasked with trying to make people get all of these, like basically give them a math major in order to understand like a big part of the story, and
the
it
thing is with
suffers.
this movie is I've heard this told when people talk about Aaron Sorkin before, who's the screenwriter, and where a lot of this movie it's the writing that's really carrying it. Not to be mean to the director Bennett Miller, he does a fine job, but Aaron Sorkin he writes uh head movies, not heart movies.
Yeah,
Whereas Bull Durham is a heart movie where it deals a lot more with making you feel good, nice, funny, light kind of fare. Whereas this, it's like kind of like Social Network is another film Aaron Sorkin wrote, where it's very much oh it gets you to think, it's in your head, but it doesn't really you know pluck emotional heartstrings. It's just trying to get your head to move. It's getting your brain working. Where it's a
yeah,
thing where it's I don't know if sports movies are those kind of movies. Are sports movies the kind of movies you wanna like think all the like the deep weird like math stuff and all like the philosophical stuff, or do you just want a sports movie to be pull at your heartstrings and just kind of you're along for the ride?
yeah. Baseball is about the only sport that I think that would really work with, seeing as it's probably also the only sport that pays so much attention to its statistics. There's so many things that are measured within the sport of baseball, from batting average to how many times per game did this guy scratch his crotch and readjust his cup. I mean, there really is like
To
a statistic and then combined statistic for everything.
to
And
make a point, that's actually a thing people keep track of in mixed martial arts, is how many times a cup has been touched during a match. That's actually
exactly.
a statistic that's kept track of. So that's a
Yeah, I
real
mean,
thing.
now more than ever, people are keeping track of like every little burp, fart, and cough that goes on within a sport. And baseball, it's like I said, thousands of statistics that have been kept track for years. There really aren't that many measurements that you can gravitate toward in any other sport. I mean, um, so that's kind of the weird task, especially with this story that Sorkin was tasked with. And I think he found a lot of, because he's like a master screenwriter. I mean, it's nothing not obvious to point out, but he was the perfect guy to be tasked with this. And thank God he is a baseball fanatic,
Yeah.
because there
It
were
shows, it
also,
does show through.
yeah, there's also really, as a baseball fan, a lot of detail that he shows that really they're really nice to recognize, and that I think add a lot of depth and detail to the story. Um, if I had to really pick one or the other, I would pick Moneyball, because I think this is a way in which Sorkin is also able to transform the sports movie a little bit. Whereas before, a lot of sports movies had to be like a Bull Durham with a lot more heart, that had to be combined with different stories. This story is very focused on the sport itself and what it means to be a fan or a player of the sport. And I appreciate the effort that he put forward in writing this movie.
Mm.
I think a lot of good came out of it.
Well, before I give my answer and my reasoning for my answer, I do want to look at, kind of the responses that other people gave to it, because I kind of like seeing what the consensus is and see where we're kind of lining up here. So Bull Durham, financially, this is actually a pretty cheap movie. David, you want to take a shot in the dark how much Bull Durham cost to make in 1988?
Considering that they probably only had the lockdown, I don't know. I'm pretty sure this was filmed in Durham. And that was the actual stadium, but it's a minor league town. It's not like you needed a whole lot of money to lock it down.
You're not running down Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna guess it was probably around 5 million.
Oh, damn, you're real close. All right. This whole film cost 70 million to make. It grossed 50 million dollars. And
Wait, you said 70 million to
or
make?
sorry, 7 million. It cost
Oh,
7
okay,
million to
okay,
make.
okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sounds about right.
Here's the crazy thing. This was only released in the United States in theaters. So it made 50 million just in America. Whereas
Yeah.
Moneyball, which kind of is surprising to me. So this movie it was 50 million to make. Cost 50 million to make Moneyball.
Sounds about right.
In the United States, it only grossed about 75 million and made 25 when it got released everywhere else. So this movie, considering it was a pretty it wasn't a flop, but it was not a financial blast. It made double its budget back, but it's not something, that really is considered a success in Hollywood.
Yeah, not a whole lot of profit, but when you're considering that it's a biopic and then also a drama,
And it's a
um,
sports movie on top of that, and
yeah,
sports
I
movies
mean,
have a connotation to them.
this movie never would have been made if it wasn't for the fact that Sorkin was the writer and then Brad Pitt was attached to it. When you really think about it, that's probably what people bought tickets for. But yeah, I mean, considering both of those and how, again, dense the story is, that's pretty decent.
Yeah. And on that note,
Yeah.
like critics and reviews of this, because I use IMDb for everything, we have Bull Durham at a 7.1 out of 10 and Moneyball at a 7.6. So I think people have warmed up on Moneyball since, and I'd have to say I probably have too, because I'd say Moneyball is probably the better of the two films,
Yeah.
with asterisk. If you're just looking to just have a feel good, like just easy watch, Bull Durham is the one you want to watch. If you're looking for just the better quality, Moneyball. And that's
Yeah,
probably where I end up on.
I think that's a fair assessment. If you're looking for the baseball movie, go with Bull Durham. But if you actually want like a pretty decent drama, I
Yeah,
think Moneyball is actually more of that type of movie.
but that is what we have to say about that. But David,
Yeah.
do you want to talk any more about baseball while we have a bated breath audience going on?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We also have deleted scenes to get through, and I
Oh,
actually have a few interesting ideas.
oh,
Um,
please, because I got a few too. All right.
yeah, and I think this is actually a little bit where I do get to talk a little bit more about baseball because some of my deleted scenes actually have to do with the detail of the sport that I think should be shown. Because it's actually a dream of mine one day to be able to write a baseball movie. Um, I think there's still a lot to be said about the sport, especially nowadays when there really hasn't been. Moneyball was like pretty much the last baseball movie that came out. There
That's
really
true. I can't think of a single like sports movie, like
there
big budget
was
sports movie that came out since
there
Moneyball.
actually was one since then. About two Indian-born baseball players that came over, and then like John Hamm was the scout that was supposed to market them to Major League
Oh
Baseball. But
yeah,
I
they were
can't.
like the cricket guy. They were like cricket players or whatever, and they came over to play
Yeah,
baseball.
let
Oh
me see what that
God.
movie was. But that was like the last one, and then after that, really, there really has not been anything else.
Which also feels weird because that feels like a rip off of Moneyball.
Yeah, well, a little bit. It's probably a little bit more along the lines of like The Perfect Game or something like this. Million Dollar Arm is what it's called, and it was a decent film. I remember seeing it. Um,
Because you will watch any baseball movie.
oh, absolutely. But really, I mean, John Hamm's good, and the story was pretty good because it's about two guys coming and living the dream in America. Kind of an immigrant story more than a baseball story, but nonetheless, I mean, I think for Bull Durham, one thing I would have loved to have seen for comedic purposes is the baseball hazing. Uh, it's not uncommon for in the locker room for new guys to get hazed through locker room pranks. So I would have loved to have seen something like this. Like I think one of my favorite stories is that I can't remember who or for what team, but there's some story that has gone around where somebody has defecated inside somebody's gym bag.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, that
you know,
that's one of those things that gets around every locker room.
yeah. I mean, I think there was especially for Bull Durham, where a lot of the jokes are based around the specificity of the sport and not necessarily how it's played, but how the guys survive within the locker room. I think there's something left to be desired there. Or on top of this, I mean, there's a lot of stories about road trips. I mean, one of my favorite stories is apparently that George Brett, star player for the Kansas City Royals, once shit his pants in a casino in Las Vegas and then had to walk with his pants around his ankles all the way back to his room from the hotel bathroom in the lobby. Um, I mean, there's a whole bunch of anecdotes that go on have existed within the Major League Baseball lexicon that I think could have survived into the cut of that film. But um,
What
alternatively, in Moneyball, it's actually touched on, but I think could have been a much bigger part of the movie. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a comment made by one of the veteran players that they had to pay for sodas in the locker room.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, the Oakland Athletics are famous for being absolute shitheads and cheapskates to their players. And the soda machine in the locker room for years, and I think even after Billy Beane's tenure there, you had to pay for sodas and snacks out of the vending machines because they were such cheapskates. I mean, it was also a thing that apparently the locker rooms in that stadium smelled like shit because the sewer system ran near it. It's
Oh God.
yeah, it's super bad. So I thought they could have talked a little bit more shit on the Coliseum, but uh,
I mean, I know
I'm glad
people
they mentioned
today who
that.
still talk shit on the Coliseum. All right.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a terribly outdated stadium. It has character, but I do hope that that city can figure out something to do for a new stadium soon because the Athletics need it.
Bruh, the
Um,
Coliseum is so bad that when we got the Rams to come over, they were like, "No, we're not playing in the Coliseum. We'll just build a new stadium. It's fine."
yeah, no kidding. Um, I don't know. Yeah, it's like that would have been interesting, or I don't know. I can't really think of too many funny things because I respect that movie too much. But that, if anything, would have been something nice to have learned. Or maybe like, I would also like to see maybe if there are any anecdotes of Jonah Hill fraternizing with the players a little bit more and coming out of his shell.
That you
Um,
just it's a whole scene and it's Jonah Hill just getting shit wasted in the locker room. All the baseball players are laughing at him.
oh
Uh,
yeah, like there's scenes of like the players dancing after. Well, there was one in which they did that after losing, but after victories during the win streak, or even like play major league players, they go out for drinks and everything all the time. Why not to have that like other side of the story where he has to fire players and get this nice like positive bit of that end where he gets to go out and like be personable with the players.
Honestly, that would
Um,
have been kind of interesting because that's probably something that was missing a little bit, is because we didn't really know the players all that well. And I think that would have been a really good scene to have in the film.
yeah. But what about you? What kind of deleted scenes would you have come up with?
So, first things first, I want to see like the ritual Susan Sarandon has in front of that fucking altar. Okay?
Hmm.
Because I'm sure she's sacrificing chickens to that thing. Because she has a whole, it's a whole like giant like altar to baseball and the baseball gods, and she worships it like she's at church. She's doing some freaky shit in front of that thing, and I want to know what's going on. And as for Moneyball, honestly, I'd have to agree with you. I want a little bit more hazing, maybe aspects of that to kind of like lighten the mood a little bit, and also to give the players more personality. Because I think that's probably something to be very good in that film, is still know a little bit more about the players. Specifically, I want to see Jonah Hill getting shit faced and trying to like do a keg stand in a locker room as Chris Pratt is just like trying to hold him up, because that would have just been a wonderful, wonderful bit of scene in this movie.
Yeah. Or I mean, what would have been cool is to see him get to do the champagne popping at the end of the season because when you clinch the division, you saran wrap the walls of the locker room and then pop a bunch of champagne with the goggles on. Why not have Jonah Hill down there with them to celebrate the win? Because it would have been a really symbolic scene of like his confirmation that he's figured out a way to successfully manage a
Manage a
Major League
team.
Baseball team, which is his whole storyline. So
So yeah.
yeah, uh,
So there you go, everybody.
yeah,
We liked Moneyball the best. If there's some things that could have made it better, but it was still good. Bull Durham's a pretty nice film if you want to just kind of relax and go along with it. But David, what's next week?
okay. So next week we're actually going to have a couple movies that Dean and I have picked out for our own purposes. We've tried to do a few things that we thought the audience might like, but now it's time for us to get a little bit of our stuff in there. We're going to be having a double feature of Urban Legends Final Cut
The sequel to Urban Legends, the superior sequel.
and a little film I like called Unnecessary Death. Hello, everyone. This is David from the future. Awkward moment, but we actually found out that Necessary Death was scrubbed from the internet, so it would be pretty hard for you guys to watch that along with us. Luckily, Dean and I are actually going to be watching this movie and recording an extra episode, maybe finding a way to get it out to you guys because I had to search for a DVD copy on eBay. So we'll find it somewhere in the future, but for now, what we will be placing in place of this for next week's episode is I Know What You Did Last Summer. Anyway, back to the episode.
These two films are going to be coming out, and they're going to be our nice little prelude before we hit the month of October and get really deep into all the fun, spooky horror films.
Yes, that month is definitely going to be full of some hits. I mean, it's gonna be good.
All right, everybody. But we will find out which is better, Urban Legends Final Cut or Necessary Death, next week on the Double Feature Podcast. David,
Yes, we
as
think.
always.
Yeah. Dean, well, real quick, Dean, why don't you tell them where they can find us and
Damn, I
all that
almost got
jazz?
away with it too. If it weren't
Almost
for
got
these
away with it.
meddling good people with memories. All
Yeah.
right, so you can find us obviously on our Instagram, double feature _ podcast. We post when our episodes are coming out. We post our own movie posters that kind of show what's we're playing. We are also on our YouTube channel. That would be David,
In the frame.
which we post all of our podcasts. We post videos up there when we get the chance. We're also going to start posting some side content to go with some of our podcasts. I believe we're working on one for our Terry Gilliam episode as we speak, so look out for that. And you can also find us Oh, David, what's going on?
Oh no, I was just gonna say it should be out to this point because there's a little bit of delay between when we record these and when we release them, but we'll see.
Hopefully it'll be out. And then after all that, you can even find us on Spotify, Google Podcast, and our sponsor Anchor. Please go and check us out. It helps us from being poor and paying for David's brand new J's.
Yes, I still have those people knocking on my door, and they are giving me a lot of threats, a lot of very physical threats. We really do appreciate the support in order to keep me alive.
All right, everybody. Now, I think that should be the good wrap up for this one, David. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. The hot dogs have been eaten. It's the end of the game. The final out of the 27-out game has been made. People are leaving the stadium, and I think it's time for us to as well.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us at the Double Feature Picture Show, and have a good night. Peace.
See ya.